Scratch DJs everywhere nowadays. It's surprising, and it's funny, and it's good, because you know, for every DJ that you know of, you know there's 5 other guys that you don't know of that should keep you on your toes, definitely.
Tableism is a new forward-moving thing, taking those same old regenerated sounds and building something completely reachable, completely fast-paced, which is what the world is now. It's like stuff that's just bang, 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 in and out, new sound here, new sound there, make the audience just completely panic because you're playing like an 80s hit into a new hip-hop hit, and it's fast and good.
It's getting as an instrument now, like a guitar or whatever else instrument. So it's going to be something for the future in different type of music.
You're not just limited to one kind of sound coming out of an instrument. You can pretty much do whatever you want.
It makes me dance.
My favorite DJ, I'd have to say P-Love.
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 P-Love is pushing it.
My name is P-Love, and I do some scratching, and I started scratching a couple of years ago when I was mobile DJing, and I realized the capabilities of the turntable as a musical instrument. So this here is a basic setup for DJing. It consists of 2 turntables and your mixer, and of course needles for the turntables. If your budget's really tight, you could just get by on 1 turntable and your mixer and the needle for the table. Basically anyone can scratch on any kind of turntable, whether it's a belt drive table, a direct drive table like this one, or parents' old turntable from the 70s. The main thing though, if you want to scratch on any kind of turntable, is that the friction between the record and the platter, this thing here, has to be kept minimal. And that's done by slip mats. They're made out of felt. They replace the rubber slip mat that you get when you buy a turntable. So you take that rubber thing, throw it out, buy this at any kind of DJ store, and yeah, stick it on, and you notice that this thing glides really easily and with hardly any friction at all. So when you put a record on top, no friction. Okay, we're going to talk a bit about this thing here. It's called the mixer, and it's the most essential part of the DJ setup because it controls the sound coming out of both turntables. And that's done by using the crossfader right here. Basically what the crossfader does, it controls the sound coming out of the speaker from this turntable. So when the crossfader is all the way to the left, you can only hear the sound coming out of the turntable on the left side of the mixer. And when the crossfader is on the right, you just hear what's coming out of this table. And when it's in the middle, you can hear both. You can also control the sound by using the volume faders for each table. Now there's also a switch on this mixer to reverse the direction of the crossfader. So instead of having the crossfader on this side for this table, flip the switch, and it's on this side. Now some DJs prefer this style with the crossfader reversed because it allows for easier scratching, but then again, it's just a matter of personal preference. Tip number 1, you must have a steady surface for the tables. No matter how good your tables and mixer are, or no matter how good your unskippable the needles are, you must have a steady surface. Okay, one of the first things you'll notice about this setup is that the turntables are turned sideways. And that's pretty much because when you have the tables turned sideways, the tone arms are out of the way, so you won't accidentally hit the tone arm with your arm and knock it off and cause some ruckus. Okay, back to the friction thing. Some DJs like to have really slippery records, and even the best slip mats won't be able to deliver. So there's this little thing, this little piece of plastic. You can either cut up from a record sleeve, or some people even use wax paper. But basically, it just goes under the slip mat, right there. And go as fast as you want. Whoa. Okay, these green stickers right here are used to serve as visual cues for marking samples on a record. Let's take the sample right here. Now I put this sticker on the record, and it uses the needle right here as a reference point to mark that. So the beginning of the sample is marked right here at when the sticker is aligned with the needle. And so you can just bring it back. So this sticker here marks this sample. Well, it basically marks any sample in the record, but when it comes to this sample, you have to make a mental note that the sticker is placed right here, just about at, let's say, 9 o'clock. So you always know that the sticker, when it's here, eventually it will come to this sample. And just bring it back. Here we go! Okay, one of the most overlooked aspects of DJing is adjusting the tone arm weight and height for the needle. Basically, each needle manufacturer has their recommendations on what the weight should be, but the idea is the same. There should be enough weight to keep the needle in the groove of the record, but if there's too much weight on the needle, then it kind of digs into the record groove and wears it out prematurely. So best way to do this is to first balance your tone arm and calibrate it to 0, which means 0 grams of tracking force. So the way you do this is by taking the weight on the tone arm and adjusting it so that the tone arm kind of just like floats in the air. Let's see. Not all the way up, it just kind of floats in the middle. Like that. Like that. So that means that there's 0 grams of tracking force right now. So we take this little dial and you line the little red line up with 0. Now the recommended tracking force for this needle is 4 grams. So we take this and turn it 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is only the recommended weight. There's a number of external conditions like how old your record is. If your record's really old that you're scratching, then it might skip more, in which case you'd have to increase the weight or decrease the weight or whatever. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the weight. Let's keep that at 4. Okay, the recommended tone arm height for this needle is 4 millimeters. So it's already set here, but you can adjust it by unlocking this and then moving the little pointer around. And you notice the lower it gets, the lower the tone arm gets. And it just, so there, 4 millimeters. Lock it. There it is. Now this thing here is called the anti-skating. When you adjust the anti-skating, you adjust a little weight here so that when anti-skating is at 0, the tone arm, when it floats, just kind of gravitates towards the center. But so if you're scratching and the needle's skipping, if you notice which direction it's skipping this way, then it's better to adjust the anti-skating higher, so maybe like 4 or 5, and then you'll notice is that it shifts the weight so that the needle will gravitate away from the center of the record. But that's pretty rare, so for now we'll just set the anti-skating to 0 so that the tone arm will gravitate towards the center of the record.
I find there's a lot of different things you could scratch with. Myself, I like scratching with like a lot of storybook records and a lot of, say, you get different sounds out of different records, and I just like sometimes use like whatever records, like I just hear a sound I like and I go back and forth with it. And it's surprising sometimes the sounds you can get from different types of records.
So you go underground, you find the ma and pa store in your town. Here in Montreal, it's Science Records. We carry as the latest if we can get them. They're hard to get because everyone's buying them now, but we keep a stock of breakbeat records all the time, which has plain beats for the DJs, and it has tons of samples all jammed together, like a zillion sounds, so they can just fly and practice all day and whatever. It's basically underground, ma and pa level cottage industry still. I mean, vinyl is still there. It's making a huge comeback.
I never turn down any records. I never I'll listen to anything if it's got, I don't know, whether it's for a beat to flow to, or if it's got some nice samples, or it got some cool quotes or whatever, then yeah. Okay, the most fundamental scratch is also the first scratch ever invented, which is known as the baby scratch. This scratch doesn't involve any use of the crossfader. It's just using your sample and moving it back and forth. Notice that you have this marker to cue where the sample is. Okay, this next scratch is still a pretty basic scratch, but it's a little harder than the baby scratch because it uses a crossfader. It's known as a forward scratch. So you have your sample, and with a forward scratch, you turn the sound on using the fader, let it play, turn the sound off, rewind the record so that you have the beginning of the sample, which is also marked by the sticker, and let it play again. And you'll notice here that I'm doing it with the crossfader in reverse mode, but it can also be done in normal. But I just prefer reverse mode. And then there's also the reverse scratch, which is pretty much the same thing, but in reverse, meaning so let's put the two together. Okay, this next scratch is called the stab. It's very similar to the forward scratch. The main difference is you have more control over the pitch of the record by moving the record quickly, creating a higher pitch, slowly, creating a lower pitch, or just taking your hand off the record and releasing it, just letting the sample play out. So you can combine those and you can be more musical with your stabs. Okay, this scratch is called the chirp. It's a bit more complex because it requires just a bit more coordination between the fader hand and the record hand, but let's get down to it. Start with this sample. And you start the chirp by starting with the fader in the open position. Then when the sound plays, you cut it out halfway through the fader like this. And then you do the same thing in reverse. You cut it in halfway through on the back stroke. And then you just repeat that, and when you do it quickly, it kind of sounds like this. Now when you combine that with all the other scratches, the baby scratch and the forwards and stabs, then you can, I don't know, sound like this. Okay, this next scratch is called the tear scratch. It doesn't involve use of the crossfader. It's a pretty complex scratch because it's pretty demanding on the record hand. So let's take the sample right here. And I guess your most basic tear or most common tear is the 1 forward, 2 back, which means that you push the record forward once and then rewind it back in 2 strokes. Forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. And then when you do that repeatedly, it sounds like this. And then there's different variations on that, which include the 2 forward, 1 back. or even the 2 forward, 2 back. And then you can combine them into, I don't know, into different combinations of tears. Okay, this scratch is called the transform scratch. It's a bit demanding on the fader hand. And what you do is take your sample and you move it around pretty slowly, creating your different pitches. And then what you do with the fader hand is just turn it on and off in rhythm, I guess. Or you could, scratch slowly or quickly. Now we're gonna get into some mixing. Mixing's it's a pretty important skill to have, whether you spin hip hop or house or hardcore techno or bad 80s music at Sweet 16s or weddings. But I don't know, the idea remains the same throughout. You just have to keep a beat going from song to song and just keep the mix consistent. So let's start with this beat right here. First thing you want to do is find the downbeat of the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. So the downbeats are pretty much the ones of the beat. And what you want to do is you want to get those downbeats to match. So let's take this beat here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Oops. Okay. So normally you would just do this in your headphones so no one else would be able to hear you, but just do it live for this video. So you notice this one's a bit fast. So what you want to do is slow it down with the pitch control right here. Or you can also use your finger to glide it gently along the platter. So beats are pretty much lined up here. So that's the first step. The second step is learning when to insert the beat in. And you basically want to do that on the downbeat to get them to match. Speed this up. And when you're mixing, you want to blend these two together. So you do that just by blending the volumes together after you make sure they've matched. So this one's at full, no, they're both at full, and then you decrease the volume of this one. And there you have it, it's your mix. If I had to compare the turntable to I guess a legitimized musical instrument, it would probably be closest to the drums, because everything about the turntable and mixer combined it's more percussive than anything. Like you can't really play scales or whatever. I guess you could if you have a really finely tuned ear, but it's more of a percussive instrument than anything.
It's a lot like playing with any other drummer, really, because you play a line and the drummer reacts. In this case, Paulo, as a turntablist, percussionist, is reacting to the line and giving me stuff back to react back to him. And we just flip it back and forth.
Play musically in terms of scratching, I guess only advice would be to build a vocabulary of certain patterns, certain scratches, and then learn how to use that vocabulary, like speaking, like there's like, you have your words, like your little patterns, and they form, and then you can piece them together to form valid sentences that try to express a certain thought, and then those sentences, just formed into paragraphs, which basically like symbolize bigger ideas, and you can do the same thing with scratching, because in a way scratching is a musical language, and language is speaking and expressing thoughts.